Okay, let's talk about the quadratic formula, and specifically solving quadratics with the quadratic formula. So solving ax squared, right, plus bx plus c, which is our general form quadratic, right, when it's equal to 0, if we solve this by completing the square, we will come out with this. So if we complete the square, which I'll actually show you at the end of this if you want to see it. You don't have to stay for the entire video, but at the end I'll derive how to get this equation. So any quadratic equal to 0, I can plug it into this formula where a is the coefficient on x squared, b is the coefficient on x, and c is the constant, and this will generate a solution for this equation, okay? So the quadratic formula is what this is called, and it can solve any quadratic as long as it's equal to 0, all right, just by this formula. All right, so it's pretty simple. It's just kind of plug and chug. You have to deal with some radicals as well. So let's say I want to solve x squared minus 2x minus 3, right, equals 0. The equal 0 is the key. It has to be equal to 0. If it isn't equal to 0, get it equal to 0. Right? Move your pieces or your terms to one side so you get a 0 on the right side. Well, if this is true, then since our quadratic formula solves ax squared plus bx plus c, well, then a must be the coefficient here, which is 1. B must be this term, which is negative 2. And c must be this term, which is negative 3. Right? So a is 1, b is negative 2, and c is negative 3. Put it into our quadratic formula, and we'll get minus b, so that's b squared, and then minus 4, and then a is 1, c is negative 3, all over 2 times a. And now it's just arithmetic, right? So we'll do a negative times a negative is a positive. We'll figure all this out. So this will just be a 4, right, plus 12 is 16, and then 2 times 1 is 2. Right now, like I said, it's just fractions and radicals now. So rad 16 is just 4. So I'll do 2 plus or minus 4 all over 2. Now there's a couple ways to do it. This one I'm going to actually separate. So see how they have a common denominator? Then I can do 2 divided by this denominator and plus or minus 4 divided by this denominator. Right? So if fractions have a common denominator, you can put them together. If they have a common denominator, you can also separate them. So I'm going to separate it into 2 divided by 2, plus or minus 4 divided by 2, and then simplify to 1 plus or minus 2. All right, so this is 1 equals x minus, or I'm sorry, x equals 1 minus 2, and x equals 1 plus 2. So x equals negative 1 and 3. All right, so if we were to plug 1, negative 1 into this, we get a 0. If we plug 3 into this, we'd also get a 0. Okay? All right, let's try another example. So here I have a coefficient at a, so my on the x squared, which is 6. So the quadratic formula doesn't care. Like, remember, complete the square, we couldn't have a coefficient, but the quadratic formula doesn't care. So now a is 6, b is 5, and c is 1. So a is 6, b is 5, c is 1. Plug it into our quadratic formula. Minus b plus or minus b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So now it's just arithmetic. So I'll do a minus 5 plus or minus. This comes out to be 1. So square root of 1 and 2 times 6 is 12. And then I did the square root of 1 is just 1. Okay, and so now I'm not going to break this up into negative 5 over 12 plus or minus 1 over 12. I'm going to do it all together. I'm going to do negative 5 minus 1 over 12 and negative 5 plus 1 over 12. So it's just a second way to do it, right? So sometimes it's nice to get common denominators to split it up. Sometimes it's easier just to do it this way, right? So you'll see this negative 6 came from negative 5 minus 1, and then the negative 4 came from negative 5 plus 1. And then negative 6 over 12 is negative 1/2, and negative 4 over 12 is negative 1/3. All right? Okay, that's the quadratic formula. So stop the video and do classic problem number 1. This is it for the video, so you can stop it. I'm going to do develop or derive the quadratic formula. So if you want to see it, I don't know, stick around. Okay, so here's the quadratic formula. So it comes from ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So I'm going to do a few steps first. I'm going to take the c to the right. So I'm just making a minus c, subtract c from both sides. And then I'm going to complete the square, so there can't be an a. So I'm going to divide everything by a. Okay, so my first 2 steps, take the c to the right side and divide everything by a. Okay, now complete the square. I need half of this squared. So I need to add that to both sides. Right, so this is just standard completing the square. And now I know this is a perfect square where it's x plus b over 2a as the perfect square. And then this one, all I did was I did b squared and then 2a squared. So b squared is b squared, 2 squared is 4, and a squared is a squared. All right, so I completed the square. And that's how I got this perfect square. And I just did some arithmetic here. All right. Okay, now that I have this, I want common denominators. I want to put these two together. So this has a 4a squared and this has an a. So I need to multiply numerator and denominator by 4a. Okay, because then I'll get a 4a squared in the denominator and I can put these together. All right, so let's do that. 4a times c is 4ac. A times 4a is 4a squared. Now you can see I have a common denominator, so let's put these two fractions together. So this will be a b squared minus 4ac. Right? So that's what I have. So I did all that work to get common denominators. So I have a common denominator. All right, now that I have one term here, let's take the square root. So I'll square root both sides. Remember, when you take a square root, include a plus or a minus. So here I have this. Okay, now we're at that step. So now I'm going to take this b minus 2a because I want to get x all by itself to the right side. So I'll subtract it. And I'm also going to split up this radical. So anytime you're radical of a fraction, you can do square root of the top and square root of the bottom, right? Numerator and denominator. All right, so I took the b over 2a to the right side, and I just split up the radicals. Well, square root of 4 is 2, square root of a squared is a. So this is really 2a. All right, so I'll do that. And now look, they have common denominators. So since they have common denominators, I can put them together, and that's how we get minus b plus or minus, right? Square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And that's the quadratic formula.